I'm not afraid of you, and this prison won't be able to hold me back forever. These are the words that Mayo Zambada said to Bukele in a desperate attempt to stop the hell he's experiencing inside prison, set out to send him a message to intimidate Bukele. But what did this letter say? Could it be that Bukele will give in to Mayo Zambada's demands? Stay until the end of the video and find out. Before we start, leave your registration with the like button and subscribe to our stories. They'll surely catch you. Now, activate the bell so we can begin. In the decade prior to his capture, Mayo suffered the loss of several key members of his inner circle. Authorities arrested his brother, 2 sons, and a nephew. His sons, Ismael Zambada Imperial, alias El Malit, Gordo, and Vicente Zambada Nibla, alias El Vicentillo, as well as his brother, Jesus El Rey Zambada, were arrested, captured, and extradited to the United States between 2010 and 2019. Another of his sons, Serafin Zambada Ortiz, was arrested in Arizona in 2013 and released in 2018. All of them collaborated in various efforts with the U.S. justice system, which granted them reduced sentences and early releases. In fact, King and Vicentillo acted as witnesses in El Chapo's trial in New York in 2019. In February 2017, Mayo survived an attack allegedly perpetrated by Damaso Lopez Nunez, another leader of the Sinaloa cartel. The ambush also targeted 2 of El Chapo's sons, suggesting an internal power struggle following the drug lord's capture and extradition to the United States earlier that year. However, the lawyer was arrested shortly after in Mexico City. May 2017. Then, the son of El Licenciado, Damaso Lopez Serrano, alias Minel, surrendered to U.S. authorities in July. This left Mayo at the top of the Sinaloa cartel, along with the sons of El Chapo, known as Los Chapitos. Like Los Chapitos, each faction has had its own collaborators and armed factions that work together most of the time, but have occasionally clashed violently. On the afternoon of July 25, 2024, Mayo traveled on a private plane to the U.S. border city of El Paso, Texas, allegedly accompanied by El Chapo's son, Joaquin Guzman Lopez. Both were arrested by U.S. authorities. The beginning of the end, the betrayal. The relationship between Mayo Zambada and the Los Chapitos, the sons of Joaquin Guzman, El Chapo, were always a mix of cooperation and tension. Since 2014, rivalries between the factions have Sinaloa cartel intensified in part due to the conflict that arose after the attack on Edgar Guzman, son of El Chapo, in 2008, an action allegedly ordered by Vicentillo, son of Mayo. This rivalry remained latent but never fully resolved, exacerbated by the fact that Mayo did not provide the necessary armed support during critical events such as the Quiliacanazo in 2019 and the arrest of Ovidio Guzman in 2023. In addition to Mayo's attempts to avoid open war and protect his family, internal and external tensions became increasingly unsustainable. In July 2024, the situation reached a point of no return when Mayo Zambada was tricked into attending a meeting that turned out to be a carefully crafted trap by the Chapitos. Joaquin Guzman Lopez, one of the Chapitos' leaders, contacted Mayo, requested his presence at a meeting to resolve disputes between Sinaloa's political leaders, including Governor Ruben Rocha Moya and former rector of the Autonomous University of Sinaloa, Hector Melillo Quinojita. This invitation seemed genuine and offered an opportunity to mediate the growing political and criminal tensions in the region. Mayo, confident that the meeting was a possibility to resolve conflicts and avoid an escalation of violence, accepted the invitation without suspecting the true intentions behind the meeting. At the meeting location, a group of armed men working for the Chapitos ambushed Mayo. The operation was swift and brutal. They beat him, covered him with a dark hood, and tied him up before putting him in the back of a pickup truck. This ambush not only demonstrated the cold, calculating nature of the Chapitos, but also their ability to carry out clandestine operations. Military precision once Mayo was transferred to a nearby airstrip. Here, the betrayal was fully consummated. He was forced onto a private plane along with Guzman Lopez and the pilot. The idea of being taken to the United States was not a mere supposition. It was a terrifying reality that El Mayo faced as his fate spiraled toward American justice upon his arrival in El Paso, Texas. El Mayo Zambada was handcuffed and under heavy guard on a flight that symbolized the end of his control over the Sinaloa cartel, and the beginning of a new era was one of uncertainty and challenge regarding the murder of Hector Melillo Queno that occurred on July 25th during an alleged attempted theft of his truck. Zambada claimed that this event was related to his own capture. The coincidence of time and place suggests that the events were intertwined with the disappearance of two members of a security team, adding further mystery and suspicion to the treasonous operation. El Mayo Zambada, facing 17 charges in a New York court, was in a critical situation. This court, which had previously sentenced El Chapo to life imprisonment, was now preparing to judge El Mayo, highlighting the magnitude of the accusations and the weight of the case. Meanwhile, the structure of the Sinaloa cartel was in a state of transition and disarray. Possible successors to El Mayo, such as Ismael Zambada and Kairos, known as El Mayo Flaco, and his twin sons, Emiliano and Porfirio, still minors, and nicknamed the Revolutionaries, were at the center of the dispute over the future leadership of the cartel. The rest of El Mayo's children, mostly free in the United States, also found themselves in a legal and political limbo. The betrayal of the Chapitos and the capture of El Mayo Zambada mark a tumultuous chapter in the history of drug trafficking. This event not only destabilized the Sinaloa cartel, but also highlighted the complex dynamics of power, loyalty, and betrayal that dominate the dark world of organized crime. The fall of El Mayo Zambada underscores how alliances can quickly crumble and how enemies can emerge from the most unexpected places, leaving a legacy of conflict and challenges for those who remain in power. Zambada's life in prison. From the moment he was captured in July 2024, the prison became a prison camp, a battle where every day was a fight for survival. The prison system was determined to ensure that Zambada, who had evaded justice for decades, felt the weight of his capture. In every fiber of his being, Zambada's days in prison were an endless series of torments. The cells were small, barely large enough to fully stretch out. The humidity permeated the walls, and the air was heavy with the stench of desperation and fear. Each morning began with the shrill sound of metal doors opening, followed by a meticulous and humiliating search of his cell. The guards, displaying barely contained hatred, searched every corner for any sign of contraband or an escape attempt. The punishments were constant and brutal. Any act the guards considered an infraction, no matter how severe, resulted in immediate punishment. Beatings with batons and insults were common. But that was only the beginning. Zambada soon he learned that the harshest punishments came without warning. They dragged him out of his cell, sometimes in the middle of the night, and took him to a dark room. This room, known among the prisoners as the Hole, was a complete isolation chamber designed to break even the strongest. In the Hole, time was distorted without light, without outside sounds, and without company. Zambada was facing his worst enemy, solitude. He could spend entire days in complete darkness, not knowing if it was day or night. The guards made sure he had no notion of the passage of time. The only interruptions to his solitude were the sporadic visits from the guards, who brought with them new forms of torture. Sometimes they simply left him without food for days, watching how the lack of nutrients began to affect him physically and mentally. Other days, they subjected him to violent interrogations using methods that bordered on inhumane deprivation. Without food, his body weakened rapidly. Malnutrition manifested itself in his pale skin and sunken eyes, but what was more alarming was the deterioration of his mind. The lack of food combined with the extreme isolation began to erode his mental resilience. His thoughts became confused, and hallucinations were frequent in his weakened state. Zambada was forced to relive the darkest moments of his life, haunted by the ghosts of his past. However, Despite these brutal punishments, Zambada maintained a spark of defiance. He knew his downfall was celebrated by many, but he also knew that his reputation depended on his resilience. Every time the guards dragged him out of the darkroom, they expected to see a broken man. Zambada, although physically weak, maintained an air of dignity that infuriated his captors no matter how many times he was held captive. Whether they beat him or deprived him of food, he didn't always return to his cell with a look that said he hadn't been beaten yet. This resilience only served to increase the intensity of the punishments. Guards, frustrated by their inability to completely break him, resorted to even more extreme methods. There were times when they left him without water for days, hoping his thirst would do what beatings couldn't. Other times, they subjected him to extreme temperatures, leaving him in freezing or hot freezers to the point of dehydration. But Zambada, who's been hardened by years of life in the world of drug trafficking, found ways to endure the pain. By the way, if you like the video, we invite you to give us a like and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos. We continue. The threat against Bukele. Mayo, Zambada, despite being confined in the Second, a penitentiary known for its strict security and harsh conditions, has not lost his ability to manipulate and exert pressure. Frustrated and tired of the constant abuse and torture of the prisoners, the president, who was being subjected to violence, decided to send a direct message to Bukele in his communication. Zambada made it clear that he would no longer tolerate the mistreatment he was receiving. He explicitly stated that if his demands were not met, the president would regret his decision to keep him in those conditions. The message was transmitted through discreet channels that, despite the Second's security measures, managed to reach the president's hands. The content of the message reflected Zambada's desperation, but also his cunning and ability to create fear. He not only threatened personal reprisals against Bukele, but also promised to wreak havoc on his administration if steps were not taken to improve his situation. Mayo knew that his words had the potential to cause concern in the president, appealing to his fear of a possible confrontation with the infamous drug trafficker. However, Nayib Bukele, known for his firm attitude and his relentless approach against organized crime, was unintimidated. Instead of giving in to Zambada's threats, the president decided to take a tough stance. Bukele was clear that any show of weakness could be interpreted as a sign of vulnerability, something he was not willing to allow. Instead of backing down, he chose to confront the situation more discreetly. In a show of determination, Bukele decided to personally visit Zambada. The president's visit was not just a symbolic act. It was a declaration that there would be no room for concessions or leniency. Upon arriving at the prison, Bukele was greeted with a mixture of surprise and tension by both prison staff and inmates. His presence in the Second was a clear message that he was willing to go to the limit to demonstrate his authority and control the situation. The meeting between Bukele and Zambada was fraught with tension. The president, known for his ability to face challenges with toughness and decisiveness, addressed Zambada with a firm attitude. He told him in clear and blunt terms that he should rot in prison. There would be no room for indulgence. Bukele's response was forceful and direct, leaving no room for interpretation. Instead, he negotiated or committed to meeting Zambada's demands. He stated that life in El Secot would become even more difficult. Bukele's words led to an immediate intensification of conditions inside the prison. The following days were a true hell for Zambada. The president ordered even more drastic measures to ensure that Zambada suffered the consequences of his defiance. The abuses became more frequent and severe, with Zambada facing physical and psychological torture that had previously been moderate. He was subjected to long hours of isolation in a darkroom, without food or water as punishment for his audacity. This new stage in Zambada's life in the Secot was marked by extremely harsh treatment designed to break his resistance and demonstrate that the president's power should not be questioned. The environment in the Secot became even more hostile for Mayo Zambada. The conditions in which he lived worsened as the prison staff, following Bukele's orders, increased the pressure on him. Physical torture intensified, and inhumane treatment became a daily routine. The other inmates also perceived the change in the environment, and in many cases, Zambada found himself isolated and vulnerable. The climate of fear and oppression that took hold in the prison was palpable, with El Mayo Zambada being the central target of a system that sought to make him pay the price for his defiance of the president's authority. And so we come to the end of this video. If you liked it, I invite you to give us a like so we can continue making more videos like this. Also, don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any of our new videos. I wish you a great day. Until next time.